Hi everyone, Simon from Horoma Studio. Today I wanted to share with you 5 common misconceptions I've noticed that architects, property developers, or any type of clients we work with tend to have when they start working with us. This video is mainly aimed at the client side, but it can still be useful for studios because it will help you to better understand where issues can stem from in your business relationship by basically identifying if your client has some of these misconceptions. And ideally, it will help you in solving those issues before they become too critical by addressing them early. So let's get started with item number 1 after a little intro. Portfolio is not the only thing that matters. Yes, portfolio is important, but nowadays it's almost a given that most studios produce decent images provided they actually fit the style you're after. So what you need to consider on top of all that, and that I think is actually way more important, is that before actually starting together is to check that your mindsets and workflow requirements fit. Because if they don't, you're going to suffer some really not good consequences. The first one will be that you won't actually get their standard output. So for instance, say you'd love to work with this really cool studio, but you know they need like 2 weeks to make like a really final image. And at the same time, you know that you're never going to be happy with your own projects like 1 week before the deadline. So obviously there's like a misalignment in terms of planning that is going to make the final output be not as good as it should be. So obviously this is not a good fit for both firms. So what matters the most now, I think, is the compatibility in terms of process between your firm and the artist. So do your research and ask questions on the process to avoid misalignment before actually starting working together. And what you should be after, I think, is like this trustful relationship where boundaries and expectations are properly set by both parties and where you listen to each other, basically. And this trustful relationship will sure be like a proper and will be the best base you can think of to actually then achieve the best result. So the key here is like open communication on the expectations and really, really early in the process. Visualization is an investment, not an expense. How many projects have you done and worked on that you're really happy with, but you're not even showing them on your portfolio because the renderings were so bad? And I think here lies the difference between a short-term and a long-term approach to visual communication, or understanding that basically visualization is an investment, not an expense. While the cost of like images for competitions can sometimes seem a bit high, it is important to understand that these images, beyond being like compulsory for your submission, are actually an integral part of your online presence and branding and overall marketing. So they're actually the cheapest way to build a portfolio and show your style until you actually manage to get your first building built. And in the realm of real estate, for instance, good and bad renderings can make the difference between a good deal and no deal. So basically in the same way that architects are here for their client to get like a bespoke service and not do some sort of like cookie cutter solution, the spending money on good visualization is going to help you get like a bespoke visual identity and help you differentiate your firm on the market. Basically, you're paying for the expertise of the artist to translate your ideas and not just do good images. What you're getting at the end is not like a mere image, but a proper translation of your intent and values and aspiration as a designer. An image that looks good is not enough. It is often misunderstood that the feedback the architect should provide is not on the image itself, but on the clarity of communication in regards to what the architect and visualizer are trying to achieve. This is why I like to differentiate a beautiful image from a successful image. Even the most beautiful image can still fail to do its job. That's why you need to understand the key to differentiating one from the other, and that key is the clarity of intent. When comes the feedback session on the image you receive, what you want to have a look at is not like some tiny irrelevant details, but to get more like an idea of the overall feel you look when you're looking at the image. And what you're checking basically is the clarity of communication of the concepts you've worked on. To do that, what you need is to have like a clear mind and clear idea of the project, which is why it's important that the person in charge of giving feedback is not some like freshly hired intern, but someone high in the hierarchy that has like a good understanding of the project. And also on top of that, it's important to have like a good understanding of the potential end audience so that you can gauge what type of details they could be sort of after. Also, it's important to trust your studio you're working with to take care of like the pure aesthetic approach, because that's what you're paying them for. So the difference between a good and a successful image, you should always be after the successful one. And the idea, I think, is that you need to don't fall in love with the image, but with the projects the image is depicting. Item number 4, don't set the brief alone. Setting the brief of visual project is actually a fun exercise, or rather it should be, because this is about like building the blocks of communication that you're going to use to sell your project that you've been working on for weeks or months even. So the brief is a combination of the goal you're after, as well as the scope of exploration you're willing to go through in order to achieve that goal. So I'll make later this year a video about how to set up properly a brief with the client, because I think it's an important topic. A common pitfall architects tend to fall into is to self-diagnose and draw conclusion from their own diagnosis before even meeting the person that is going to be in charge of their visual communication. So it is quite common in the end, and consequently, that archviz artists will come in and have like their clients saying and asking for a specific way of doing things, and then discover that a more coherent and more compelling approach was existed but was discarded too early or not even explored. The architectural equivalent would be like a client designing his own house even before meeting the architects, which is kind of a weird concept. So keep in mind that oftentimes, even though this is your own project, you're probably unaware of the potential point of views that better sell the ideas you're trying to convey. This is where the expertise of the artist you're hiring comes in handy. Instead of focusing on point of views, what I think is better is to give proper explanations of the project intentions as well as general guidelines. So don't self-diagnose, you will usually miss the point, and trust that the artist you hired will do their job properly. Last but not least, number 5, don't pin down studios to only do images. Just like architecture practices that diversify into additional consulting services, there are many archviz studios that can also provide additional services to straighten your visual communication. So generally, all these consulting services will come with hefty fees, but by now you should understand that visual communication is paramount in clarifying your brand image, differentiating your firm on the market, building online awareness, and thus maximizing your potential pool of clients and pool of projects. So if you're starting to feel comfy with the studio, don't hesitate to see if they can provide additional and more strategic services that could benefit your firm. So that's all for the common misconceptions I wanted to share with you guys. I'm lucky enough to work with architects and designers that have few or none of the misconceptions I mentioned, but nonetheless, I know they are still quite common in the industry. So I hope this little video will help clients identify their own misconceptions and work on them and fix them. And I also hope it will help archviz artists identify misconceptions their clients might have so that they can better understand their frustrations and work on the potential issues that it could arise and fix them before it arises. Working with like-minded people is a huge game changer in a business relationship, and it always leads to dramatically better end results and deliverables. So that's why I think it's important for everyone to start to try better to understand each other. So as usual, feel free to like and share if you liked the video or found it interesting, and comment in the comment section if you feel like starting the conversation on the topic. And thanks everyone again, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.